Dr. Sumit Kalra. Dr. Sumit Kalra is an assistant professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering at IIT Jodhpur. He has completed his master's and PhD from IIT Kanpur. His research area are software architecture, data analytics, IoT, and smart healthcare. He has one US patent and one Indian patent in his credit. So, without any further delay, I welcome Dr. Sumit Kalra sir. Dr. Sir, Dr. Sumit Kalra sir.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for your kind welcome and sorry for the delay. I got stuck in some traffic. So I'll I'll just share my screen.
Yes, sir. No,
Is it visible? Is it
not yet.
visible? My screen?
It is coming, sir. Just a minute.
Okay, okay. It's
Sir,
visible
please
complete.
try sharing it again. Just close once and try again because it is not appearing. So we can only see a black
Okay,
screen.
okay. Can you see now?
Just a minute, sir. It is appearing. Can any of the
Is
participants
it
see the
coming?
presentation because it is not visible to me, I guess.
Okay, let me share presentation with you. Google Slides with you where you
Yes, sir. You can share the presentation with me, and I'll share it from here. That we can do.
University ID.
Hello. So I guess the screen is visible now to all of the participants. The presentation, is it visible? Okay, sir. So the presentation is visible now. Now we can start when you are ready.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Is the screen visible now?
Yes, yes. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, you are audible. We can start, sir.
Shall I start now?
Yes, sir. We can start.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone. And today we are going to discuss about AI for material science research. And it might be looking new topic, but it's not new. People have been working in last 2 decades. And in fact, the preliminary level of AI was there since beginning uh, in the last century also. But as AI has evolved, so the application of AI are more visible in transdisciplinary areas. So today we are going to discuss on material science. Next slide, please. So about me and my lab. So I did PhD from IIT Kanpur in software architecture and cloud computing. And cloud computing and software architecture is an area where people generally uh, try to optimize some domain specific utility of computations. So immediately when I joined IIT Jodhpur, I jumped into IoT, Internet of Things, keeping software architecture and software engineering, cloud computing as my mainstream. And then at the same time, I also got chance to work on a project which is related to material science that we'll learn in subsequent slides. Next, please. So this is just an example what's happening in my lab. So immediately when lockdown was announced last year in March, we launched this telemedicine portal in April. By April end, it was running live. There were doctors on the board and patients. People started using it because they were not able to visit the physical clinics. So that's where this portal came. But then the telemedicine is not only about connecting people via audio and video. It's also about the medicine part, how we can make medicine facility remotely available. So there we got DST funding to work on a smart low-cost sensor kit that can be combined with your smartphone and it can measure vital body parameters. And currently the development is in clinical trial. And apart from that, we are also utilizing AI for conversational system. So our system talks with patient as they are talking to doctor, and Apart from that, we are combining X-ray analytics, CT scan analytics. Those analytical models are not directly coming from our lab, but we are utilizing the open source models and integrating and providing the end-to-end services. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, this is a project I started working when I joined IIT Jodhpur. This is 7 crore project, and it's about design and fabrication of indigenous powder feed metal additive manufacturing machine. So some of I have seen the profile of audience. So some of you are already from material science background, and some of you are from computer science background. So this project is exactly the amalgamation of these two things. Here what we are trying to do is these complex metallic shapes are designed in 3D models and then passed to this powder fed metal additive manufacturing. So if we understand, powder fed means initial alloys will be in the form of powder, and with the help of high high density laser beam, as the powder is being deposited on the surface, and the way that powder feeding and the laser nozzle will move, that is controlled by the 3D software outcome. So you do 3D modeling of whatever you want to design. For example, you want to design a bolt. Now that bolt 3D design is done using some 3D modeling software, and that design is exported and translated into the robotic arm movement, or this in the 6th degree of freedom. So we utilize 6th degree of freedom in XYZ, up, down, all the movements. And this is additive manufacturing. It means it's not only single metal, it's alloy. So multiple powder feeds are there. So multiple nozzle sprays are there. And it depends on how much quantity we require from one nozzle. So that is also being controlled. And here the whole idea is to learn from the 3D shapes and come up with the automated scripts that can control these CNC machines and all these nozzles and laser beams, so that the outcome is exactly the same as the 3D digital model. This we started in 2019. We have set up the initial facility, but of course due to lockdown it has been lagging. But we are expected to complete by next year. It's a 3-year project. And Professor Ravi KR from Metallurgical and Material Engineering Department is the PI of the project, and it's sponsored by DST. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is the project which led me developing my interest into material science. And this is not the only initiative we have at IIT Jodhpur. There are some other initiatives where you can see how AI can contribute in material science. Next slide. So this is biodegradable magnesium alloy, and conventionally, so we have some set of equations and systems and characteristics, and we know some certainty about how system may behave, but at the same time, the environment is quite dynamic, especially when we talk about um, biological systems like a human body. It's quite dynamic and changing almost every hour or every day. So there we would like to know the behavior of biodegradable magnesium alloy. And for this purpose, the whole surface design, the characteristics, dynamics, there are two approaches now. Either you collect all the characteristics, design, features, and other parameters, put into a complex mathematical model, and then solve it, and then try to find out the exact uh, distribution of uh, powders in that alloy. And once you go through this complex mathematical model, you actually try to create a system in the lab, an alloy in the lab, and that you put in the testing in the actual real world environment. But with the case of AI, what we are doing here is, instead of coming up with that alloy in the lab or solving those mathematical model, we are directly feeding large number of open data sets into our system related to magnesium alloy and how it reacts with uh, various elements in the environment. Those existing knowledge is being structured and put up into the model, and then we are creating the real-time simulation how it will be behaving. So this work is in progress. So like I said, most of the initiatives we started in 2019, and many of the works may not have results, but all of them will have very good direction, and they also looks quite promising because we have initial feasibility study about all these models. And so apart from that, we also would like to know the behavior when these alloys are deployed in any biological system. So how over the period it will transform, whether they will sustain various dynamics of the environment. So you can assume this dynamic environment can be in form of uh, chemical reactions as well as mechanical forces. So those are still under development, inclusion of forces and all. But given an ideal system, a static system, how AI model is able to learn how an alloy will respond, that we have some preliminary results. Next slide. Then we have this biodegradable magnesium based bulk metallic glass, and here also we are more interested in the surface properties as well. And so here we are showing that glass forming ability and then conventional analytics at the bottom, which lead to thermodynamic design of the system. And then we go for the processing the element using any either powder based alloy machine or a different approach. And the challenge here is, once your system is once you come up with some system and you start creating the alloy, you need to also verify whether those alloy are actually meeting the requirements which we have set, whether they are standard or not. In that context, what we do, we we take some high resolution surface images at every layer. When I say layer, you can assume that it's a 3D powder fed alloy is being created, and at each layer we try to measure the surface parameters using various sensors. It includes infrared uh, and high resolution, high speed cameras also. So we try to study in real time whether a particular surface is perfect or ideal as we are expecting, or there's some minor defect. Because if we are able to detect the surface defects at the each powder layer, so you can see it's micron layer. So if we can detect the defects earlier, we can stop uh, our machines immediately, rectify the surface, and then again start the process to build those implants. Why we want to build these implants in such a precision way? Because a generic implant may not be that useful. So we need to have customized implants depending on the requirement. And generally these implants also say you have requirement today, uh, and you don't want to delay your implant creation maybe more than a couple of days, right? And these implants are the each smaller dimension and surface, the strength, tensile properties. All these properties are can be customized based on the requirement of the implant. And as you know, at various places in the body, we can put the implant on the joint, knee joints, shoulder joints, or the teeth and all. So these customized properties require creation of this alloy, the kind of 3D printing of alloy with high precision and high quality. So here in this case, we are talking about that at each surface during the creation itself, will be capturing the high resolution images and then analyzing the surface properties. And so these surface properties not only includes texture analysis or level uh, smoothness analytics, but also how much powder have been deposited for which alloy, for which metal. So since it's an alloy, it will be a mixture of multiple metals. So that also we want to ensure that this mixture is deposited in the desired ratio. So that's what we are working on. Again, like this conventional pipeline is more or less there in context of some metals, but in other cases, like we are collecting more data so that we can develop AI-driven approach. Next slide. So this is another example. So it's about functionalized coating. So once that implant is prepared, depending on various functionality, we need to put some coatings on that alloy. So like corrosion is one of the reason we need some coating, and this coating also need to be taken care while we are talking about the dimensions of implant. Even in the millimeter or micrometer range, this coating is going to affect the overall size of the implant and also the weight. So those microparameters is included, and then of course this selection of particular material in a particular dynamic environment, like the pH level may vary from various organ to organ, and then not only pH, lots of chemical properties are also variable. So in this kind of approach, what we are looking for is, depending on where the implant is going to be placed, getting those environmental properties, and then coming up with the uh, perfect mixture for coating the surfaces of the implants. And in this case, in the AI part, the from IIT Jodhpur side, we are in the initial conception phase. So we have started collecting various properties and how it's going to behave in various pH conditions, and started working on creating knowledge base. Based on that, there will be AI models. Next slide. So here, this is stress and stress corrosion behavior. So here we are more interested in mechanical properties and how they behave. So if you look at these diagrams carefully, these small cracks or small gaps in any between any adhesive molecules. So that part we would like to analyze, and these cracks can accelerate the corrosion behavior of the alloy. So here also we are working on, given which condition, the environmental condition, which kind of surface will be more durable in terms of handling stress corrosion, and what kind of uh, that composition of that surface material. So since I'm from computer science background, I know about the AI approach, the exact combinations, how things are working. I'm not the domain expert, but in case you have any question, I will be handling towards the end of the session. And some questions I may redirect to people from material science to answer and help me. So in these cases, like we are working on the crack properties, and if we know the crack properties of the surface, then we can better model it, identify the shapes in which it should be formed and placed as implant. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So when we talk about AI has various branches like robotics, machine learning. So robotics is one branch where I talked about, I touched the topic about CNC machine and automating those, uh, 3D printing, 3D design. So that is more of about robotic or automation. And based on the data, whatever we do, you can maybe broadly categorize as part of machine learning initiatives. So conventional machine learning development life cycle is about, so we start with finalizing the objectives and the criteria of the model. When we'll say it is acceptable, so that gives us the objective, technical objective about the system. And then we, based on those objectives, whatever data is required, we gather those data. So before initiating the project, we work on finalizing the metrics and acceptance criteria. That is more of, comes from domain expert. So here, so we are also following similar development life cycle. So here actually material science people and computer science people sit together, and then they come up with the overall design, acceptance criteria, and metrics to be work 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 upon. Then once you know the objective and criteria, then we really get to work and start gathering the data. Now, there are different types of data, and for different types of data, we have different types of database management modules. So for some data, maybe NoSQL is better, which supports unstructured data sets. And if data is huge, which is generally true, so in that case, we try to distribute the system, make it more friendly for parallelization. And then you may need a lot of multiple queue processing. So there Kafka comes into play. I'm not saying only Kafka, but there are many other similar systems which allow you to quickly come up with a pipeline of these systems. So raw data collected will have to be pre-processed, then actual processing may take place, and then finally model optimization. So when we collect raw data, generally raw data is huge. For example, suppose I'm collecting data from vibration sensor. Depending on the precision of your vibration sensor, you may be getting few 10 GBs of data, order of 10 GB of data in like 15 minutes or so, depending on what is your precision. So this XYZ accelerometer data can quickly goes into GBs. And when we talk about this vision related data, like high resolution, high speed cameras, data easily touches terabytes, maybe in less than a day or 2-3 days. So that raw data is not directly can be fed into AI model. It has to be cleaned. It has to be, sometime if we are using supervised learning or unsupervised learning, so accordingly data need to be processed. So in that pre-processing step, we conventionally we used to follow ETL, extract, transform, and load. In extract, you extract the data from raw storage, then you write automation script to transform so that it's become ready and useful for higher complex processing. And once you transform that data set, you then load into the system where it's actually going to be used. So before extraction, we generally dump the data in secondary storage. During transformation, we bring this data into primary storage, which is faster than secondary. And in loading process, we identify the target storage medium, which is going to be helpful in our AI-driven modeling. So depending on the model, we need to choose the system where we are going to load the data. And this ETL is true for conventional systems. And there are a lot of automation tools for ETL processing. But at the same time, this automation is quite restricted, limited. Most of the time, we need human intervention because until data is processed, the system doesn't have intelligence whether a particular data will be useful or not. So in the cleaning process also, we need some uh, domain expertise, like which data is erroneous so that we can discard that data or keep it. Then, so for these ETL and data cleaning, and it's kind of data um, for making the raw data usable. So we have various tools like Spark, Resilient Distributed Datasets, RDD, MapReduce, Informatica. Then after that, once data is more clean, structured, then we can visualize the data and start exploring the data. If we don't go for initial data analysis, we may not be able to predict which kind of ML model may be more suitable for the given problem. So maybe small sample data is analyzed and visualized by the domain experts and an AI expert. And then we generally discuss together. So visualization, like if we are capturing high resolution images, that is already in the image form. But the next image, the immediate next place of the image, so we need to stitch multiple images together to localize the surface properties. So that kind of visualization processing is required. Apart from that, if data is not in image format, we may would like to go for conventional statistical analysis and like hypothesis testing and all, so that we can have initial idea whether data contains the information which we are looking for or it doesn't, or if it contains, which processing ML approach would be useful. So for this purpose, we have tools like Spark SQL, Hive, Tableau. Then we actually jump to the training model for our machine learning approach. Here, depending on whether it's vision problem, language problem, categorical data, ordered data, unordered data, so depend or multimodal data or continuous data, stream analytics kind of thing. So depending on the type of data and format, we train our machine learning model. As, as per this lecture, I am not diving deep into the what ML model is suitable for what kind of approach, but I am giving the high level pipeline which we are following and also being followed worldwide. So for for training ML model, again we have lots of frameworks like TensorFlow, Keras, GraphAxis for graph kind of data, which is like network data, and Python, ML, lib and all. So this is conventional machine learning. Then we go for fine tuning of ML model. So here we use various optimization approaches like heuristic searches or randomized search, grid search, parameter regularization, um, feedback propagation. You can say deep neural networks are good at fine tuning. They look at each and every uh, part of the data carefully in multiple model, in at multiple layers, optimize those neurons up to the level that they can be overfit sometimes. So here we need to make conscious decision at when to stop the ML model training and when to stop the fine tuning of our model. So if we do lots of fine tuning, it may not result into the uh, generic version which can work with some other parameters. So that need to be taken care. And once this model is trained and ready to be deployed, then it's wrapped inside a service. You can say it can be cloud-based service or it can be part of some microservice which is running locally. And we expose APIs, REST APIs, or it's ultimately utilized by end user. So for example, in case of our that powder fed alloy machine, that our output, the deployment of our model is actually talking to these actuators of those machines like CNC and nozzle. So the precision of actuators also matters apart from the sensing. So when we talk about end-to-end deployment of any AI model, especially in mechanical or metallurgy, we need to also equally pay attention to the precision of actuators. Okay, so that is about the AI conventional model for developing machine learning modules. Next slide. So material science mainly focuses on these parameters. So you have like material, you have some characterization of the material. You study its structure, properties, performance, and processing. So processing is like development of those alloys or metal. And AI model has to be customized to meet each and every aspect of any material. And it's not that if we study the structure, the properties will be taken care. The AI model has to be fed with various and different models have to be trained. And then these models have to work together to come up, maybe combine and come up with the overall solution. Next slide. So like combining the AI ML pipeline with the material science, like in the beginning I mentioned that the first phase is to create data sets. Or nowadays many of these data sets are openly available. So you identify the databases, data sets on which you would like to work. And depending on a selection of data set, uh, your model's functionality, the limitations, the scope will be defined. So that databases are, you may not have single data source. You may need to combine data from multiple sources. And when we combine data from multiple sources, it relates to altogether different problem of data formatting mismatch, incompatible data, missing values, error, the range, normalization. So there are lots of issues when we try to combine multiple data sets. And many times, especially in the basic science streams, it is very necessary to know what kind of measurement tools is were being used to collect the data. And because depending on the principles of measurement, the value of measure may vary a lot. So knowing those characteristics of measurement techniques and limitations, and then considering these factors while creating a unified database is quite important, and I'll say most laborious task as well. It's a manual task so far. Then we have when we start machine learning based approach, we pick some off the shelf method. So you can assume that these are pre-trained models, and by applying pre-trained models or basic Bayesian models, to try to see how the data set is fitting and where the optimization is lacking, where predictions are going wrong. So once you know the initial, like these are raw models, basic models. Once you know the performance of the raw and basic model, then depending on its indication, we can adopt the advanced machine learning approach. And depending on the gap, so after going through gap analysis, how the, I say, vanilla models are lagging behind in prediction and accuracy, we create more advanced techniques to meet our objectives. And in terms of optimization, it can be single objective optimization or multi-objective optimization. So this and multi-objective optimization is the key part of all these machine learning, deep learning techniques. So they want to optimize the parameters so that they can solve a mathematical model, conventional mathematical model, without adopting the conventional mathematical solution. And then we have feedback. So output of these techniques, the vanilla models, goes as a feedback and augment the conventional data set. And then we again retrain this model using this knowledge which we have generated. So that is where the active role of machine learning domain experts comes in. So the previous slide, I discussed about the development lifecycle model from an computer science perspective. And here I'm discussing it with from the perspective of material science research. Next. So like we had this industry 4.0, which is IoT driven. Similarly, material science is also advancing from 2.0 to 3.0. In material 2.0, we have this high-end equipment, like I talked about powder fed metal alloy machine, laser machine. And we have lots of knowledge data set about the problem domain. And then basic characteristics are already known. So you have ultimately lot of things at the plate to start with. And then there are dedicated machines which are built to create laboratory prototypes. And those prototypes are also tested maybe in the real world or in the lab using lots of complex measurement techniques. Then we go for pilot production and then evaluation, whether it's everything is going fine or there's some improvement required. So that might be you can see this is current state in many of the material science industry, but they are advancing to material 3.0. So instead of performing lab activities, what they are doing is they are using complex software, complex computational capacity with various complex algorithms, and using elements and combining them and creating hypothetical material. And they come up with this hypothetical material using simpler unit models of elements. So for example, if we combine two hydrogen with oxygen, it becomes H2O. So in the complex software, you have properties of hydrogen elements and you have properties of oxygen. And when you say I want to combine two hydrogen with one oxygen, so software should be able to tell you that once you combine H2 with O, it becomes H2O. And there are various associated properties of H2O which may be entirely different from their initial uh, constituents like hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen are, I think, both are flammable, but H2O is not flammable. So properties are changed. I have given you simplistic example, seeing the audiences of wide aspects with different backgrounds. But you can think of, and the similar process is being used to model hypothetical materials, and then these hypothetical materials are not actually prototyped in the lab so far, but it's being assumed to have functionality, and under those functional conditions, it's also tested. Right? So before investing uh, lots of cost in ideation and laboratory activities, you try various mixtures and see how things work. That can be proved to be dangerous. But here in this case, those things are happening on a software inside a computer system. And rest of the process is pretty same. Like once hypothetical material shows some promise, then we go for characterization and prototyping. And research and validation. Then pilot production and evaluation of life cycle. So in material 3.0, we are seeing that a lot more computational aspects are coming since the inception. It's not only at the end, like it's not only about once you know the metal, then you can process it using advanced robotics mechanisms, actuators, and sensors. But even coming up with that kind of material, the perfect design, you can also use a computational model. Next slide. Okay. So I think animation is not coming, but this I have like this is what also we are working on. MIT folks have been already in advanced stage in this research, and using these high resolution images, since it's PDF, I guess that is the reason animation is missing. So let me explain. Okay, I think yes. Thank you, Dr. Abhishek.
Thank you.
Yes, now you can see the animation. So this is also possible with conventional techniques, but they have come up with this deep AI approach. What they are showing here is they are given different geometrics. We are seeing that how material properties are affected And like in the right figure, you can show the predicted mechanical field, and the left figure you can see the corresponding geometry of that uh, metallic whatever the object. So now these fields, of course, we can always compute in the current days using complex mathematical models. But then these complex mathematical models are also highly depends on the parameters. Lots of parameters are there, which may not be always easy to collect and uh, find out the correct parameters. But here what they are doing is they have simply taken the high resolution images of the materials, a particular type of material. It's not generic yet. And based on the high resolution images itself, they have predicted the mechanical fields of any object based on their geometry and surface properties. So you can see that uh, in this case, this deep learning is not internally using any mathematical model to solve any computational problem. Next slide. So it's using generative adversarial neural networks to come up with this learning. In the next slide, you can see the crack propagation. So in this image, red part is like soft material, white is brittle, and green is representing how cracks are propagating on the left hand side. On the right hand side, it's like you can see the actual things. And on the left hand side, it is giving you the predicted part. So you don't need to do much of the surface analysis using some strain or stress calculation, load based stress testing. Simply with high resolution images, we can predict these properties. So as you can see how accurately their model is able to come up with the solution by looking at the high resolution images, and so how crack may be propagating. Next slide. So I have make it fast because initially we lost some time. So apart from what I have discussed, uh, so my more inclination is more about uh, getting data from sensors and how to give it to actuators. And in between, we also have AI modeling. So AI modeling can focus on like various structural or materialistic properties. It can be also used to predict the phase diagrams, or it can also be used to predict the crystal structure after some external forces and all, or inherent crystalline structures, how dynamic it is, how stable it is. Then development of interatomic potential and energy functionals. Uh, this is again going deep dive into the atomic level and combining uh, multiple elements to come up with the desired functionality and quality. And then of course, on the fly data analysis of high throughput experiment. This is the more close to my heart, because it's of course purely computer science problem. So here we are more focusing on Like I mentioned in the beginning, that how terabytes of data can be handled efficiently uh, to process and train AI models. In this case, uh, you can think of, let me give you the problem, how where the problem is. Any idea how much time it takes to copy a movie of 2 GB from your laptop to pen drive? I hope all of you might be copying this 2 GB, 3 GB data daily on daily basis from one system to another. So just reading that 2 GB of data and transferring it to another device without much processing. It's like reading and writing somewhere else, reading and writing. We are not performing any complex computational algorithms on that data as so far. It's just transferring, and that transfer takes around maybe if you are having USB 3.0, it may take around a minute. But if you are having USB 2.0, it may take around 5 to 7 minutes. Now, if your terabytes of data is being generated, now you focus on the generator part, the sensors who are generating data. If you don't consume it, the data will be lost. So your consumer of that data, the raw storage, should be efficient enough to write that terabytes of data in in quick in in the matching speed. So in this case, if just transferring the data takes few minutes, and if we add processing overhead, then it can easily goes into few minutes. And if you don't process today's 1 terabyte of data collected today itself, tomorrow it's going to create your backlog, and over the period our backlog will be so huge. So the conventional approach is, if you run on a commodity hardware, the normal computational model, the complex model of AI deep learning, can easily take uh, 75 years or equivalent to one human lifetime, average human lifetime, can easily take this uh, that much time to solve any deep learning based problem. But then we have GPUs which are much faster as compared to the commodity hardware. So the problem here we are talking about is on the fly data analysis. So it's almost in real time, because for the next day experiment we don't want to create the backlog. So here we look for distributed and parallelized data analysis as well as data processing, both kind of approaches. Like I said, data processing is more about uh, processing the data, making it more useful, uh, dealing with the missing values or erroneous values, and bringing the value of the data, of the worthiness of the data. And data analysis works on the processed data and then talks about predictive analysis or uh, or conventional analytics to understand what has already happened. So posterior analysis, prior analysis, so those parts are there. And when we say it's complex mathematical operations are being performed, I hope you must have experienced that in even running a movie which is of say 7 GB or 8 GB file movie, the commodity hardware starts showing some glitches. So the movie doesn't run that smoothly. You need expensive GPUs. to play the movie efficiently. So even the movie playing is not that complex mathematical problem or computational model, but when we have much more complex computational models, on the fly data analysis becomes really a challenging, and I would say it's one of the hottest area in computer science, and it does not only affect the material science but uh, almost all the domains. All the basic science domains are driven by large amount of data. All the social media analytics is also depending heavily on the large amount of data. So on the fly data analysis is all about real time analytics using the raw data. So you can look at the stream data from Facebook or Twitter. So their databases simply goes into few terabytes in no time. I think I have that's all from my end. Any question, any doubt?
If there are any questions from any of the participants, you are welcome to ask.
I have made it a little fast, keeping the time because of initial delay in mind. And even if there is any question offline you want to uh, know more about our ongoing work, you can always write email at sumitk@iitj.ac.in.
Okay, I will wait for just one more minute. So if there are any questions, you can ask.
Sure, sure.
So I guess there are no questions. So we can complete the session.
Yeah, you can assume that the topic was quite abstract, and coming up with question will require some hands-on experience also. So
Yes,
as long as we don't jump into the field, we don't have such question. But
yes.
I welcome all the participants to uh, join us. We can have some exploratory problems given to you. You can start working with those, and then I think you will have more better insight.
Yes, sir, definitely, sir. I guess this also this thing that most of the people are from computer science background right now, and they are not familiar with the terminologies of material science, I guess. So maybe, but your talk gave us like a very good direction into seeking possibilities of using AI in non-conventional areas, and that is what is the like main theme of this program, so that we can get such insights that how can we like go out of the box and try some new research areas or new experiments. So, yes, that is where your lecture was very good for all of us.
Yeah. So like jumping into unconventional area gives you low-hanging fruits.
Yes.
Uh, That is another reason I started venturing out in some. I will not say it's unconventional area. Outside India, it's pretty popular. In fact, I'm having some collaboration from uh, Taiwan Institute. There also they are giving us their material data. So they are working on this uh, flying boats. It's not drones, but they are different flapping boards. So they can flap like a bird. So those boards are they are working on, and there they need our AI analytics to give them some better insight about their material choice and all. So that we just started having few meetings. It's not properly conceptualized so far, but yes, there are lots of opportunities, I would say.
Yes, sir, definitely. Sir, I have just one question. So, what happens is, as a computer science background, like we generally look out for opportunities in computer vision or natural language processing, or majorly on data analytics, where we'll get the data and we'll do something with that. So, when working on like some real physical world kind of applications where we are dealing with physical phenomena, so how different it is to use the same AI models or same AI algorithms while working with such kind of problems?
So, in my limited experience so far, last 1.5 year or 2 years,
Yes.
I've seen that uh, in the computer vision part, from computer science perspective, targeting deep learning model, optimal deep learning model is almost similar. It's not much different. The only thing is you need to spend some time with the domain experts, sit together and understand what they are looking for. It's not that what we want to give them. It's more about coming from the domain expertise and what they are looking for. So that's where we may need to, remove our tag of maybe computer science researcher and put maybe tag of a requirement gathering person in a software engineering. We want to talk to those domain experts, sit with our notebook and pen, and note down how they are thinking, what they are looking for, and then come back and do our homework. Whatever terms, like you mentioned, that there are some terms which may not be that intuitive to computer science researcher. I agree. It was also same case with me, and still it's the similar case. Given my limited exposure, I still don't know lots of terminology in the material science.
Okay. Okay.
But then I did not wait for to have complete glossary of material science with me. With my limited knowledge of ABC in material science, I started, jumping out and start seeing how deep learning models can be trained, and so getting very, you know, uh, so demotivating results in the beginning. And I think, why it's happening. But slowly it comes on the track, and I started also adopting the uh, domain experts language. So that gives you boost and motivation, and then also enables you to dive more deeper into that domain. And then you can, of course, use our expertise of computer vision, NLP. And see, in a case of NLP, it might be possible. I'm just um, thinking aloud. It may be some NLP technique be more effective in some ultrasonic data analysis,
Okay.
because we from like in many spiritual aspects we see that everything runs in a rhythm. Nature runs in a rhythm. So if machine is running in a rhythm, so that uh, it's the language of that machine which it talks, and that language may not be the spoken language, but it's the ultrasonic uh, data which we get from ultrasonic sensors. So if we can understand the machine language and can help in knowing whether machine is facing any problem. So we say that disease does not come immediately. It start accumulating over the years. On the structural properties, cracks, small cracks start developing over the years, and then in machines, their ultrasonic sound starts changing much early. their vibration properties start changing much earlier. So we can understand their problems. Maybe some NLP model the approach may work better, not the model as such, but the approach may work better there. That is just a thought.
Agreed, sir. Agreed. So I guess like that is the key here, that we have to patiently first understand the problem, and then like try different types of solutions coming from the already tried and tested techniques, so that one of them will work for the given problem, and then we'll have the results. I guess that is like how we should approach problem in such unconventional areas. So it was great to have you with us in this program. I guess all the participants would have definitely enjoyed your session, and although it could be like a bit out of our like day-to-day lingo from the computer science lingo, but definitely it gives a like a particular type of motivation to go ahead and start experimenting with new problems which are still left to be touched upon from an AI perspective. So that was like very good for us to know from your lectures.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
if there are no any questions, can we complete the session?
Yes, sure.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, the whole organizing team, for like joining us and agreeing to share your knowledge with us.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for your patience listening, and I hope you will find some interest in the domain. May not be in material science, but any other domain, so that whatever tools, techniques you have learned in computer science, you can actually use it in some concrete purpose instead of only staying in the digital world.
Agreed, agreed.
Thank you.
So, sir, we'll be taking up a picture, kind of a screenshot. So, if that is okay for you, you can join us, or like otherwise, will be just out of like a memory kind of thing. So, we do not have physical sessions right now, but we'll take a screenshot of the Steam meeting itself only. So, if that is okay for you, if you can join us in that, I invite all the participants as well as you to turn the cameras on. Okay, I'll have to enable the cameras first. Just a second. Just a second. So I've enabled the camera, so all can join. Okay, so we'll wait for 2 minutes so that everybody can turn on their cameras, and then we'll take the next. Okay, I'll take the picture in 5 seconds. I'll count down from 5 to 1. So, and then I'll take the screenshot, so you can be ready for that. So we'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that was it. I'll take one more. So 5, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for turning on your camera. So it is always nice to have such memories when like we are associated with so many people from so many different areas or backgrounds, and definitely it will be a memory to cherish, I guess. Thank you for turning on your cameras. So with that said, thank you for joining us today. From the whole of the organizing team, I thank you for your session. Now, if you want, you can leave. Yes, all the participants, you can leave now. I'll be sharing a link to submit the session-wise assessment for both the sessions today. You can submit your assessment answers by tomorrow morning 8 a.m. So it will be live for the whole day and the whole night. So as you can find time, you can do that. I'll be sharing the link on WhatsApp as well as Microsoft Teams. I'll close this meeting now. Thank you for joining for the today's session. Tomorrow we'll be starting early at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Tomorrow's session, first session will be by Shlok Gupta. He's a data scientist at Walmart, USA. So the session will be on market analytics, applications of AI in market analytics.